All right. Well, welcome, families. We have Nicholeen Peck with us today, and she is going to be sharing the not so well known secret of education success. And I'm really excited to hear from her. Thank you so much. We were just chatting about how she is currently with her son on his senior trip and talking to us from a lodge. And I'm so grateful for her taking time out of this really special time to share with us. So thank you so much, Nicholeen.
Yeah, you bet. I'm happy to be here. So I have four children of my own. My oldest is 25 and my youngest is 17, almost 18, and he is just about ready to graduate and he's got the next phases of his life just already planned out and doing, he's just on the road to doing so many great things. He's actually been doing college studies this whole year and stuff, which is why it's pretty easy for us to take away. But he wanted to have a ski trip for his senior trip with his cousins. So that's what we're doing. We are on a ski trip. So this is like my last supervising the senior trip with the friends thing. And I was asked to do this and I thought, you know what, if there's people that are just my people that I love, it's people who are teaching their children at home and making sure that their children get the best education possible. And because that was my life, that's what I did for my children. And this is just the end of it for me. So a few other things about me, if you don't know me already, I was a treatment foster parent for a number of years for treatment teens. They were all between the ages of 12 and 18. They had a variety of different processing issues that they dealt with, things like ADHD, OCD, ODD, RAD, FAS, bipolar, kleptomania, compulsive lying, anger control issues, sensory issues, things like that. And they would come to our home for treatment care. And that was a life-changing thing for our family and for them. In fact, when they came to our home, I thought, okay, they've trained me a lot in how to do some behavior modification stuff, which is great. These teens definitely need some behavior modification, but I want it to be more than that. I want it to be a change of heart. I want them to have some skills, adult skills, and a recipe for their life where they can have relationship success, where they can motivate themselves forward all the time and not just to have somebody leaning over them telling them, don't do that all the time, right? And so I decided I wanted to teach them self-government. And people started asking me a short while after that, what are you doing? And I would say, well, I'm just teaching them self-government. And they said, well, these kids are changing so quickly and so drastically. We want to know what you're doing. So people started asking me to teach at their homeschool support groups, homeschool conferences, church groups, PTA groups, all kinds of different things so that I could help them see better ways to communicate with their children. And then in 2009, the BBC over in England actually asked our family to be on a documentary. Well, they called it a documentary, but in reality, it was a reality TV show. And it was called The World's Strictest Parents. And they brought us two troubled teens to stay in our house for 8 days. And the world saw this homeschool family that was maybe not as weird as they thought they might be. And actually, these two teens that came to our home, they were both 17. They both had drug problems. They came from broken homes that really struggled, a lot of dysfunction in their background. And the first couple of days, they didn't like the idea of rules. Of course, we weren't angry or anything. We were always just very calm with them, but we were very firm and very principled about the way that we would handle everything at our house. And so for a couple of days, they pushed against that because they didn't like any boundaries. And then after 2 days, they just completely chilled out. And by the end of the 8 days, they were crying and begging not to leave our home and telling us, please don't make us go. We feel so safe here. And so then people were like, okay, what's going on at your house? Where's your book and whatever? And I never thought I would write a book. I mean, I was just a homeschool mom, minding my own business, trying to do the best I could to raise my children. And I'll tell you what, there's a whole lot of power in a person who understands how people learn and who understands the the family dynamic and the strength that's in the family dynamic, who understands how a person's brain works, and what you are engaged in this education process with your children, teaching them the adult skills they need for success, but also the relationship, that social and emotional development that you do as a family that nobody else can duplicate. No friend group, nothing can duplicate that. And then also to understand the faith, I'm just going to say, that's required when you teach someone something, that learning process. You have to go, no, they will learn, they can learn, it will happen. That right there is such a unique skill set in this day and age. I had no idea how powerful it was. And so at the end of the day, I love meeting with people like you, because this is a power group, right? These are people who don't do just the easy thing. We do absolutely the hardest thing because it's the best thing. We deliberately do it. And in the end, we actually show our children a role, an identity, power that they won't ever see anywhere else, because of our embracing deliberately this role of parent as teacher also in the lives of our children, instead of being passive, which many parents do nowadays, in that passive role as parent, and then they just go, oh no, look what society's doing to my child, darn, but instead we're doing something else, which I think is fantastic. Anyway, so what I want to talk to you about today is something that people started asking me to share years ago, when they were asking about the book and come speak at our conference and stuff like that. And that is this secret to success. And it is parenting success, relationship success, launching them to adulthood success, but also education success. And it's one principle. And we're going to spend our whole time talking about this one principle today, and what we can do to develop this principle in our lives and in our educational environments and in our homes. This one principle is self-government. So my website is called teachingselfgovernment.com. My YouTube channel is called the Teaching Self-Government YouTube channel. My podcast, the Teaching Self-Government podcast. And that's because absolutely everything I do, whether it's talking about homeschooling and education, talking about emotional trauma and emotional development, or talking about parenting and disciplining, or the exploitation of children, which I do with my other hat. I'm president of an organization. It's an NGO, a nonprofit group. We consult at the United Nations, trying to stop them from taking away parental rights and stuff, called the Worldwide Organization for Women. Everything I do ends up coming back to this principle of self-government. So as we get into how to bring self-government into your environment and how to help your children harness that, and what that's going to look like for them being able to govern themselves with their studies and with their chores and with everything else that they do in their lives, we've got to get a firm understanding of what that principle really means. And if we can understand principle for just a second, principle is something that is broadly applicable, okay? So there's a difference between a rule or a format and then a principle. A principle is like a truth. It's like rock solid, okay? So it's not something that somebody makes up. It's something that somebody finds and then has to live according to, because they go, well, that's just true, right? And so a principle is broadly applicable. It is everlasting, so it doesn't stop, okay? It's forever. And a rule can change all the time. Like, well, I mean, you don't have to have your seatbelt on if da 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 da, right? That's how you know it's a rule and not a principle, okay? Safety is usually not a principle. Safety is a rule. Comfort is not a principle. Everybody wants comfort and safety nowadays. We're going crazy over it in our culture, in our society. In fact, we live in a time where, like, being uncomfortable to most people is like worse than having cholera or something, like they can't handle it. How can I possibly be uncomfortable? And so we're making all these weird rules and laws and everything to try to tailor fit to somebody's comfort level, when comfort isn't even a principle. It's just a condition, a feeling, a preference. And so then we're turning it into rule, turning it into laws and different things. But really underlying all of the laws and and the principles of freedom, there's always other principles under there. And one of those key principles that has been underneath the principles of all freedom, whether it's freedom for the individual or the family or the education or whatever it is, there's always been this principle of self-government as one of those bottom levels. In fact, in the United States, they said, okay, we're going to make a self-governing nation. So let's talk about what that principle of self-government actually means. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into some nuts and bolts about things you can do in your environment to help your family, your students learn self-government, and how you can have better self-government as well, so that you don't fall into the opposite of self-government, which is usually emotional manipulation. Okay? And so if we are manipulating, using emotion to try to elicit certain things, fear and whatever, into the minds and hearts of our children, then in the end, they don't learn to master themselves. They learn to blame other people for things. And that's not what we want. It's not powerful. So self-government, this is my definition of self-government. Self-government is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them. So that's two things: understanding cause and effect, and then knowing yourself. So this is very important, because when a person is self-governing, they don't just recognize Newton's laws of cause and effect, but they recognize cause and effect as it relates to everything, even their relationships. So when I was a treatment foster parent, I recognized that the parents of these children that came to my home did not understand cause and effect in their relationships with the children. Otherwise, they wouldn't have messed up so bad, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't have allowed the children to develop some of these behaviors that they had, especially considering some of their processing styles. Also, the children did not understand cause and effect. So they didn't understand that if they got aggressive towards somebody, if they yelled at their parents, or they wouldn't do what their parents told them they needed to do, that actually decreased their trust in the relationship, which in the long term would make it so they wouldn't get to do as many things that they wanted to do. They didn't understand that. That's cause and effect in a relationship. Parents don't understand that when they yell at a child, that the child immediately doesn't trust them. The moment that the parent gets short-tempered and yells at their child, the child goes, okay, what do I need to do here? I'm afraid of this. This doesn't feel okay to me. So what do I need to say? What do I need to do? So they immediately go to manipulative tactics to try to calm the emotions that are coming at them from the parent, but they do not trust what is going to come out of the parent next. So through that whole process, they may be reacting to the parent in such a way that it looks like they're complying, but in their hearts, they're going, I don't trust the parent. I don't know what they're going to do. And that's when we hear children say things like, oh no, you can't tell my mom because she'll kill me, right? Because mom, I can't trust what mom will do if mom finds out the truth. So when a person understands cause and effect relating to self-government, they are living completely honestly. You can't be self-governed unless you are honest. And that brings us to the second part of the definition. So the second part of the definition is possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them. Did you know one of the hardest things that a person ever does is look at their own behavior or their own thought processes and say, I think I was wrong. I think I didn't do that in a way that was productive. In fact, I might have hurt myself and somebody else. I need to change. The statement, I need to change, and feeling like that is completely comfortable and normal is actually foreign to the majority of people. This isn't because we can't do it. It's because our society has trained us to make excuses, give allowances, multiple second chances, all these kinds of things, so that we don't feel like we have to take responsibility at first. for our own behaviors. Only if we can't get out of it, we can't get around it, we're found out and there's no way to blame somebody else, then fine, we'll humble ourselves and say, okay, I did something wrong, I guess I'll have to change it. And then we'll probably attack ourselves for it, because it's like, I'm so bad, I wasn't perfect, and I wanted everybody to think I was perfect. And there's a lot of adults that do this. Are you recognizing that with what I'm saying? There are some adults that you know that if you brought something to their attention, if you said something like, hey, honey, there's something that happened a little bit ago, and I don't think it went very good. I think we can't have that behavior happen in our home. Or I think it didn't work out good with your brother or your mother-in-law or whatever to talk to them that way, that they will go, what? Blah, 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 blah. And they all of a sudden get mad. They can't take it. And this is because they do not want to understand cause and effect as it relates to their own behaviors. They have no problem pointing out cause and effect as it relates to your behaviors or anybody else's behaviors. But when it comes to their own behaviors, no way. And if you're 100% honest with yourself, you also could say, is that me? Do I do that? Because we all have these moments where we don't want to be honest, where we want to say, well, this happened because that, because that happened. And we don't want to take responsibility. So when a person is self-governing, they can take complete responsibility for themselves, for their thoughts, their actions, their feelings, their relationships, their time management, everything. Think of how beautiful it would be if the children with their studies could manage their own time. Well, I want you to know something. It's actually possible. It's possible. So for all of my children, all of my 4 children, as they have hit what I call their scholar phase of development. So usually when they hit about age 11 or 12, and they're starting to get more intense with their studies, they want to put in more time, they're setting academic goals, they're wanting to increase their skill level, that kind of stuff. They start putting in more and more time. Guess what they start doing? Budgeting their time. And once they hit about age 14, they are like, Mom, I need to finish this many hours this year so that I can be on track, so that I can fully graduate from homeschool by the time I'm 16 and start university classes. And that's what they want to do, because I told them when they're 12, hey, did you know it takes 5,000 hours to finish a high school education? So you can do that as quickly as you would like to. And this is what it looks like to do your 5,000 hours. You need to put in this much time. These are the things that qualify. Lego does not qualify anymore. Okay, so now these things qualify, and we're going to start them about now when age 12, 13. So how many hours do you need each year? Probably as you get older, you want to put in more and more time. So where should we start out now as we're just transitioning into that? Because I deliberately lay that out for them at the very beginning, then they know how many hours, and guess what they do? They set their goals in our weekly meetings, and they follow through. And we're going to take a little bit of time and talk about some weekly meetings, things that I think will be really helpful for you. But first, I want to spend some time talking about the type of tone and the type of structure that is required to create an environment where self-government can be learned. So in order to create a good structure or environment where a person can learn self-government, there has to be a certain type of a tone or a feeling that exists. And that feeling should feel safe, although it is not motivated by safety, okay? So it will feel safe because it's totally consistent. Consistency is part of our tone. There's other tone elements that we're going to be talking about, that all of them end up relating to bonding and calmness, which are really important. So we want to keep those things in mind so that our relationship does what it needs to maintain its intactness. Then the second thing is a certain type of a structure. Now, I know some of you probably are the more like, oh, I'm an unschooler, or oh, I'm kind of fly by the seat of the pants, it's like windy today, so we're going to make a kite, and that's what we're doing, or whatever. And I want you to know I'm actually that type of mom. I'm like, let's see, son, you're going to be leaving here this time. Da, 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 da. Well, you want to do a ski trip? Like, let's do it. Let's go do it, right? So I'm like that mom where I'm going to say, and that's awesome education. We need that for our relationship, for our family. So I'm a live in the moment mom. But when it comes to the way our family is going to learn self-government, the way we are going to allow that principle to permeate our lives, I'm definitely going to have a structure, because that structure is going to include the way that we communicate with each other, the way that we solve problems with each other. So the reason why I call self-government the not so known secret to education success, to parenting success, is actually because what people don't recognize when they're planning for the educational success of their child is that the way they communicate about every little thing, about getting the dishes done, about the chores, about how to handle a sibling conflict, all those little things, those communications are actually the underlying secret sauce that actually creates the environment where the child follows through with everything, where the child is calm and communicates effectively, where there's no power struggles that need to happen over math, those kinds of things. Those go back to the way the family has decided to communicate with each other. And if you don't have it planned out and you're flying by the seat of your pants all the time, then it turns into manipulation, oftentimes emotional manipulation a lot of the time. And people get stuck there feeling like this is so emotionally draining every day. It's World War III, it's whatever, and they feel like we didn't check off anything on the list. All we did was just try to get them to do one chore the whole day, and it was a fight, and and all that kind of, and it's because they didn't take the time a little bit to prepare. They didn't know there were skills that could help them. So what I am assuming is that probably principally you're on the same page as I am. You want self-government, you want your children to have freedom, you want good communication, all those kinds of things. I'm going to assume we are on that level together. But I'm also going to assume that I might have some skills that can help you move your skill level up, okay? Because if your practice does not match your principle, you have dysfunction. That's what happens every time. So your practice has to match your principle. It's the only reason I allowed the BBC to come and film in our home, because I knew that no matter what, I had worked on it for so many years with foster children, no matter what, my practice would match my principle, no matter what. Because I had already created the entire system, the structure, that no matter how I would communicate with them and whatever the problem was, there was nothing that I wasn't prepared to handle, because I had all the pieces in place. And so those are some of the pieces that I would like to share with you today. So let's talk about what this looks like for self-government success. So first off, as we're teaching our children, it's really important to know what that education actually looks like. Okay, and so we're going to draw a diagram. I wish I had a cute little picture for you, but I did not prepare a PowerPoint, so I apologize for that. Anyway, but if we draw the picture of a wagon wheel, okay, so if you have a paper, you get to draw the diagram. So the center of the wagon wheel, the middle, the circle, that heavy piece of wood, okay, the hub of that wagon wheel. Then we're going to draw some spokes going out from that center piece of wood, and then around those spokes, a band, the rim of the wheel that goes around the whole thing, that holds those spokes into that center piece. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's label this. So the center piece of that wagon wheel represents your core values. It represents your morals, your beliefs, all of those types of things that you hold most dear. So this is going to be the character development that you want your children to have. You want them to be good people. You want them to be honest. Probably within your religious practices, there's certain things that you want them to possess at the end of their education, because you want them to be a well-rounded person, right? So these pieces are important pieces. They're the parts that hook them to you and to all the other people around them. That core piece in the middle is the part that gives your child purpose for their life. That's what's right and wrong, good and bad, true and false. This is the part that helps them understand their morals and makes their decisions for them, right? So this is a key piece, and oftentimes in education is a neglected piece nowadays. And this is because people are so afraid of bringing in any morals or religious preferences that they just make everything amoral altogether and don't talk about what's right and wrong, good and bad, true and false. And that leaves our children unable to discern in the whole rest of their education, which is actually a huge failure. Okay, so this is the bit we want, the biggest piece of the education that makes them a good person. Because if you're like me, having my child be a good person is way more important than whether they know math or not. And I'm just going to say that straight up. Now, my children excelled. They all started college early. They all could do, big time collegiate work really young. Okay, so when it comes to homeschooling, people would say, oh, wow, Nicholeen was a really big success. But what they didn't know was that my goal was not to impress them with my child's academic prowess. My goal always was to make sure that they were good people, that they knew what was right and wrong, good and bad, true and false, and they would always pick right, good, and true. I felt like if I could make it a person, an adult who had that type of discernment, I would create a rare diamond. I would create something that nobody else was doing right then. That was going to be my secret sauce. And that meant that they had to love my morals. Now, as we go throughout the rest of this picture, you'll see that there's a key piece for them loving and holding on deeply to my moral training. So let's label those spokes, okay, that are coming out from that core piece, that centerpiece. Those represent all of the things that we're going to teach to our children, okay? So we teach them all kinds of things. We teach them to read. We teach them good hygiene. We teach them to be kind to other people. We teach them to work hard. There's so many things we teach them, to tie their shoes, to do their math. There's all these things we teach our children. And those things are rooted in our core values. So guess what? You're probably not ever going to teach something that you do not think has a deep value. At the end of the day, you won't. So if you think that, a person's language or the way they speak to another person really doesn't matter, then you won't teach your child to have refinement of speech. My father was a speech teacher and a debate coach. For him, words were everything. And I'm grateful to that because I wouldn't be the person that I am today if it weren't for that type of training and that refinement. And he would always say to me, Nicholeen, master your mother tongue, and you will make a mark upon the world that will be noticed. And if we did not say something that was refined in our speech, he would correct us for that. He would tell us that's not refined. You want people to take you seriously? Be refined. So for him, there was a moral. There was a belief in that, and that's why he taught that. There's some people, they'll let their children say anything because for them, they don't care. They don't have that type of a moral or a belief or a value that they hold dear. So everything you are going to teach your children, whether it's reading or math or kindness or hygiene, is all because there is a principle in that middle piece that you care about. So why do you teach your child to read? Freedom. That's why. Because we know that a person will be in bondage. Everything will happen to them. They will not have a voice if they can't be literate, if they can't read, write, or speak. That's what it means to be liberal, okay? A liberal arts education means you can read, write, speak, and compute. Mostly read, write, speak. If your child can't speak in front of other people, if we never give them that chance, they're not fully liberal. They haven't had a full freedom. A full liberal is that root for liberty, right? So when a person knows how to read, that means that they have freedom. They have the opportunity to read the writings of their country, to read the works of great thinkers so that they can be truly free. That's why we teach a person to read. So, and if you didn't know why it just seemed important to you, then that's actually why it started in the first place, okay? So those are the things we teach our children. Now let's look at this band that goes around the outside of that teaching. This band that holds all of the teaching into the core values is the piece that I want to hit on the most right now. And for the rest of today, really, and this presentation, we're going to be hitting on this piece. That band that holds the teaching into our core values represents our relationship. our relationship. So there are many parents who think, you know what? I just have to hammer that math in. I don't care if they hate me for it. I am going to hammer that math in. Or the music practice must occur. I don't care. They will do that music practice and they will just hit it hard, or the chores, or the whatever training it is that they're trying to do, because they don't want their child to be a quitter, or they don't want their child to be lazy. Those are things in the core. Okay. They don't want lazy. They don't want quitter. They want hard worker, motivated. Those are things in the core values that they want for the child. And they're trying to hit at the teaching to make that happen. And in so doing, it's like erasing a whole piece of that relationship band. So what happens if you damage the relationship to hammer the teaching in? What happens when you try to put weight on that wheel and it's rolling down and it's got a big chunk missing out of the rim? What happens to the teaching as soon as you start to drive on it? The whole thing collapses. The whole thing breaks apart. So what I'm trying to hit here is the importance of the relationship. If your relationship is not intact, if you do not have relationship as a high priority, and if you don't know the way to correct and teach and be firm with your children while still maintaining that relationship, then you could end up damaging a relationship and thereby damaging all the education and maybe even the moral training for the child. It's huge. So many people, they're just such good religious people, very devout in their faith, and they just start laying into their children, getting very heavy-handed with their children, eye for eye, tooth for a tooth. And in the end, the child doesn't trust, the child is afraid. And then the child starts bullying other people or being aggressive or turning against the parent. And they're wondering, I did everything. I didn't let them make any mistakes, but they hurt the relationship. But did you know that allowing a child to do whatever they want, whenever they want, is abandonment, it's neglect, and it actually damages a relationship too, because it doesn't keep the roles in the right place. So I thought people understood roles. Years ago, I wrote my main book. My main book is called Parenting a House United. Okay, this is like the key piece of it all. In order to understand the program, you have to read that book and apply everything in it, or take my TSG parenting course, or do one of my 3-day trainings or something like that, in order to really get all the pieces. Okay, so that's the main book. I wrote that years ago, became a bestseller, but people would ask me these questions. They would say, okay, Nicholeen, I want to learn all of these skills and principles that you're teaching, but my child, they just don't care. They won't listen to me. They won't do anything I say. And I would say, well, that's a roles issue. I mean, here's some skills that you can use to combat that, but the roles obviously are not in the right place. And they would look at me with this questioning, like, roles. And so I assumed when I wrote that book that people understood roles and the roles in a family. And I don't mean responsibilities like who makes dinner and stuff, but I mean, like, what does it mean to be mother? What does it mean to be father? What does that mean to the psyche and development of a child? And what does it mean to be 15-year-old son? There's an identity there. Do they understand the identity of 12-year-old daughter, 15-year-old son, or mother or father? If they don't, then dysfunction will result, because they'll constantly be trying to undermine the other person's role. So then I had to write another book. And if you haven't read any of my books, this is a great book to start with to prepare you to implement the whole system. And the book is called Roles: The Secret to Family, Business, and Social Success. So, and I know that this is there's some of these versions of books do actually mention religious things, but I do have secular versions of these books as well, if you need that for funding or whatever it happens to be. Okay, so just so you're aware. And my course and all that kind of stuff is secular as well, just so that you know. So anyway, roles are huge. This is a key piece to understanding who you are and developing that relationship. So if a parent neglects their roles and they just abandon the child and let the child do whatever they want, the relationship falls apart and all the teaching falls out too. So that means that there is this place, this sweet spot that we have to hit, where we are the parent who does teaching and correcting and has some good firmness, but is not overbearing and is not overly aggressive or manipulative, but also understands the child, where they're coming from, what they need, and they can maintain this really bonded and connected relationship. So I do want to say the answer is not in becoming your child's friend. Many people think that if they become their child's friend, that will create a good relationship. That has been disproven. Absolutely disproven. Dr. Benjamin Spock came up with that hypothesis years ago. The result was the hippie generation. They all turned away from their parents. He was called the father of the hippie generation. Those ideas are still propagated today, and they actually undermine roles, which means that dysfunction is the result. If the parent behaves as child, or if the child has to behave as their own parent or anybody else's parent, then in the end they have dysfunction and regret, and oftentimes don't learn the lessons they need to in their life. So this is why we had a whole generation of dysfunctional people, then raising another generation of people, which is where we find ourselves today. Okay. All right, so let's talk about what it takes to develop this type of relationship, create this environment where there's the right type of tone and structure, where we can have self-government exist. And as you can see by the speed with which I am talking, with absolutely no notes prepared for you, you guys, my iceberg runs deep, okay, on all of this, which means we could talk about this for days. When I do a 3-day training, it is literally a 3-day long, 24 hours of content training. So we are going to scratch the surface today, but I'm hoping to give you some things that you can take away, you can start using immediately, but I promise you, you will probably need other pieces, okay, that we did not get the chance to fully go over today. So please, if this is something that's helpful to you, keep learning about it because it's going to be beneficial. Okay, so let's talk about the tone elements. We're going to hit on a few tone elements that are going to be vital for creating the right type of environment. And then what I would like to do is spend the rest of the time talking about structure. And then if we have time, we'll take some question and answer at the end. So if you do have questions, you can put it in the chat. We can take those at the end, or you can just ask them on the call if that's allowed. I don't know. It's whatever Megan says because she's in charge. Okay, so the tone elements that we would like to talk about. Number one tone element is acceptance. Okay, acceptance. We have a generation of young people right now who actually are not sure if they measure up to what their parents wanted them to be. The parents oftentimes have overprotected, have not allowed them to step out of their comfort zones as often. There are many single children which also have a higher level of stress to please their parents. They do think they have to be perfect. Parents have tailor-fitted lifestyles so that they are very, very perfect. Children don't have to struggle very much. Things have been made very easy. And so children are oftentimes not accepting their own failures, okay? And parents are sometimes not accepting of failures or don't even allow failures to happen. So when parents see something go wrong, they'll sometimes go into an emotional break. Oh no, my child saw porn. What am I going to do? Oh no, my child is addicted to porn. What am I going to do? I hope you know that like about 85, 87% of your households will struggle with that very one. So you have to be ready. You can try everything you want to keep them away, but don't go to Walmart then, okay? Or whatever, because it's like, it's everywhere. And they're going to find it, and someone's going to show it to them, and it's some church activity or something is going to happen, okay? And even if they don't see it when it's in your home, they will end up having to battle it at some point. And so this is where we're at, this sexual attack on society, especially on our children. So the best things you can do is really talk to them heavily about it, right? Why and all that kind of stuff, but also prepare yourself for when it happens. I'm not going to think my child's disgusting. I'm not going to hate my child. I'm not going to turn my heart away from the child. Instead, I'm going to turn my heart more toward the child. And I'm going to say, we got this. We can handle it. I'm so glad you talked to me about it. Nothing shocks me. Guess what? We all have to overcome sexual stuff, me included. Everybody, we're doing this. You just take it with confidence. That's what you have to do with everything. They take wooden blocks, throw them at their sibling, cause a black eye. You can't take it personal. It may seem like an emotional, dramatic moment, but it's over. Once it's over, it's over. So you have to then say, I'm not going to be emotional. I'm going to accept that that happened. I'm not going to think bad of the child, but I am going to correct them and teach them how to handle this in the future, right? We're going to make sure that we don't have this situation happen again, hopefully, if we have a temper problem, but I'm not going to take it personally. So acceptance means don't take it personally. Whatever they do, don't take it personally. You have got to put your own personal feelings aside. You have hopes and dreams for your child. You're working toward them all the time. You have to have a long view, a big vision of this adult that you're creating. But If they don't hit it when they're a child in that one moment, you can't take it personally. You have to keep the long view and not just the short, immediate view. Okay. So keep that in mind. Acceptance, super important, which really does mean that we can't overload our children with unnecessary criticisms about appearances and all these kinds of things, because those things truly are a distraction to the relationship and to the skill development that does need to occur. Now, this doesn't mean we can't ever give a child a criticism. We're going to talk about how to do that. And it is important. If we protect our children from all criticisms, they will have fragility problems. And we do have a fragility situation in our society today with young people. I mean, it is kind of an epidemic, actually. People talk about resiliency like crazy, but we should be talking about creating people who are anti-fragile. And that means they need to know how to be corrected and how to accept criticism. We are going to talk about that, but let's just be careful not to make these criticisms personal and not to download them all the time on the children about things that don't matter. Like maybe they didn't match that day. So what? You know, it's not a big deal. Okay. I always told myself I wasn't going to have children with boogers all over their faces. And then I have 3 children and I'm looking at them one day and they're all like booger smeared. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay. So that's out the window. I mean, so you can't decide to take it personal. I mean, we were at church too. It was really ugly. Okay. So anyway, all right. So that's acceptance. Another thing that we need to talk about is trust. We do have to trust that they actually want to do the good thing. I know that nobody's perfect. I know that we are all born with the ability to make mistakes and have human error, okay? Because there is good and bad all around us. But never have I looked at a little baby, and I love babies. I've never looked at one and thought, what a bad baby. You know, they're just not. They haven't done anything yet. Okay. They haven't made any bad decisions yet because they don't even know what right and wrong is yet. They don't. And so we have to remember that they're trying to do everything right and they mess up a lot. So if you do happen to see the BBC program of the world's strictest parents, which I was on, which you can see on my website, teachingselfgovernment.com, if you go to the blog tab, you can see the video blogs, and on the videos, there is the world's strictest parents that's on there in one of the videos. There is a moment when James, he's 17, he's really starting to have a panic. He has a lot of anxiety, but there were other things that were going on and he was starting to lose it. Plus he was having withdrawals from major drugs and smoking. He'd been smoking since he was like 8 years old and he was all of a sudden not smoking at our house. I mean, there was a lot going on and he was starting to lose it. And I thought, you know what? He does not trust he can handle what is going on in his brain right now, but he needs to know that I do trust that he can do this and that I can help him. And so you see me at this moment say, James, give me a hug. And he followed my instruction and he gave me a hug. And you don't hear the whole conversation. You just hear me say a couple of things to him. But I told him that I trusted that he could do this, that he could give himself direction and follow through, that he could govern himself, and he could prepare himself for the next upcoming event, which he was a little bit worried about. And he immediately calmed down in my arms. He felt my trust. And he decided to trust in that. The opposite of trust is force. Okay. So if we're constantly forcing our children, we might not be applying the principle of trust. And if they are making mistakes, we need to not go to force, but instead go to trust. This doesn't mean we don't correct. We do, but it has to be done with a tone of, I don't think you're a bad person. I just know you need a little teaching right now. And that's okay. I had to have that doing foster care. These troubled teens, they would do behaviors and say things that you never thought a person could even say or do. They would come at me violently. I could spend my days hating them. But instead, I decided to trust that they just didn't know the skills yet and that I needed to help them. That was my job as their mom at that time in their lives. And it made all the difference. So this brings me to another tone element, which is love. Love and mercy, actually. So if we love our children, we absolutely need to forgive them, right? I know you love your children because you're here, because you're watching this. You wouldn't spend a time listening to some lady for an hour if you didn't love your children. So I know that you do. But there are times that we can fall out of love with them, especially if they have some really troubling behaviors. Maybe they're mean to other people or something like that. We can find ourselves not wanting to be in their presence. And I definitely had that experience with some of my foster children, even for one short time with one of my own biological children. And I found myself going, what is going on? I'm not wanting to be with this child. What's wrong with me? I can't help them. I can't touch their heart. Our relationship will be damaged if I do not feel love for them in the moment. I have to correct them. So I had one child, she was one of my foster children. She was a diagnosed kleptomaniac, okay? Compulsive liar with anger control issues. That was what it said in her file. And it was true. Anyway, and she would come home from school every day and she would have stolen things from people. So we had to body search her every day. That was not fun. And then would come all the lies about where things came from. And then we had to check into all of it. It wasn't fun. I didn't look forward to it. I knew she would come home every day at 4 o'clock. And so I realized my relationship with her is not working. I didn't feel a bond. If I didn't feel a bond, I knew the relationship was damaged. And so I told myself, I've got to fix this. So I actually decided that at 3:45 every day, I would go into my room and I would actually pray to love her. Now, whether you're a praying person or not, maybe you don't pray. Maybe you're the type of a person that's just like, I'm just going to think grateful thoughts about the person. I'm grateful about this and this and this, because actually gratitude is the seed of love. So that can lead you toward loving a person. But for me, I prayed, and I prayed that I would love her. And when I did that, I did it for 15 minutes so that I would be ready to be full of love for her by the moment she walked in the door. And I had to start going through all of her belongings and everything else and talking to her about all the lies, that I wouldn't take it personally, that I could feel that love. Now let's talk for a second about mercy. We have to forgive them when they do things. So if I found something, I couldn't take it personal, right? Again, I had to forgive her. But there's other things that we do that are very merciful, sometimes that people don't quite acknowledge. And that is when a person is going out of control. Let's say they've got a problem, they lie. Do you know it's merciful to correct the person and to say, oh, that was a lie, we need to fix that? Did you know that's merciful? It may seem like you're putting a person on the spot, but if you don't catch it, they won't fix it and becomes a big, big monster. It's something that they get addicted to. It becomes a habit then, and they think it works. So it's not very merciful to allow a bad behavior to persist just because we don't want to put somebody on the spot for it. Another thing is when they go completely out of control. When they go completely out of control, it's actually, or even just when they've done anything wrong, it's merciful to correct them. They have done studies now that where they see that if you allow a person to just go in their room and just, be away from you for a while or whatever, that they actually wallow down, down, down deeper. The relationship gets so damaged by the time they're at the bottom of their pit, which is basically back brain, fight or flight mode in the brain. Okay. Once they hit there, they have hit bottom before they come back forward. It is so hard for them to get back to a place of regular. Their regulation gets thrown off. Okay, so it's better to help stop them beforehand. If they're midbrain, let's pull them to front brain. Let's do a correction. Let's try to help them get to calmness right then. Let's not let them go all the way to back brain then, if we can at all stop it. Now, some people, it's just a habit, they're going to do it, and it's going to take practice for them not to do it. But let's help them learn how to not do it. Because making it so that a person has to go out of control every time just to be understood, that's horrible. There's a lot of people who feel entitled to just have fits and yell at other people. That's bondage. It's not freedom. If you can't be understood and be calm and communicate in a calm way, if you have to lose your control to get your children to do their chores, then you're in bondage. You have trained yourself to think you have to do that. And they have trained themselves to think, we will wait for mom's angry cue, then we will do it. Everyone's being manipulated by the bondage. So you have to develop new skills. So let's talk about the last tone element that I have for you, and that is the tone element of calmness. I have an entire training on calmness. In fact, on my website, there's something called the Calm Parenting Toolkit. And right now on my website, on the homepage, it is free. So if you would like to go and take that mini course, you would do that. It is a beginner course that will start you into some self-government training. So that could be something that would be really beneficial to you. There's also a class called The Power of Calm. This is a class where I teach the 6-step process for how to be calm when someone else isn't, how to help them get calm without losing your calmness at the same time. This is very helpful, and I go through actually how I trained myself to be calm. I am a fiery personality. You can probably tell just by the way that I talk, because I'm certainly not passive and not at all. I definitely am the type of person who could shoot darts out my mouth if I wanted to wound someone. But I decided that I was going to be calm. I was going to be assertive instead of aggressive. And I was going to train myself on how to communicate so that I could do so in a way that would handle problems, that would be confident and reassuring, but also would be firm and calm at the same time. And so I go into some of those things. That is at the root of everything that we're going to now talk about next when we talk about our structural elements. So we're always pointing everyone toward calmness, and you'll see this calmness come out again and again as I talk about some of these structural pieces. So the Teaching Self-Government program is probably most known for the structure of the 4 basic skills. And I wish I had my children's books here at the lodge to show you, but I did not bring any supplies with me to hold up and show you. So if you go to teachingselfgovernment.com, you can definitely see supplies there. But there are 4 children's books, and they each teach one of the 4 basic skills to children. These 4 basic skills are skills that I taught to all of the foster children that came to my home, keeping in mind they were sometimes 17 when they came. These are not baby skills, even though the books are written for children probably about ages 12 and under, okay? These skills are life skills. Every adult needs them. I use them on a regular basis myself, and probably you do too, especially when you're having one of those really emotionally healthy, motivated days. You are using these 4 basic skills. So what are the 4 basic skills? They are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. When a person is fully self-governed, they can do these 4 basic skills themselves, which means I give myself instruction. I give myself no answer and criticism. I give myself correction when I need to, and I disagree appropriately with anyone that I need to, maybe even myself. So these 4 basic skills are keys for success. All of the structural pieces hinge on these 4 basic skills being able to be used. There are other pieces. I'm definitely not going to have time in this 1-hour class to talk about all of them. But there are also 5 teaching styles for how we correct the behaviors and how we help teach the behaviors to the children. Today, I'm going to put my biggest focus on the 4 basic skills, but I just want to also tell you about these 5 teaching styles. So you have to know how to correct the children in a way that maintains your calmness, how to prepare them to succeed with a good pre-teaching so that the problem doesn't occur in the first place, how to do in out of control teaching. I call this the rule of 3, or we use calm down spot. This is part of our intensive teaching. When a child is showing truly intensive behavior, they're going out of control. How to do that, how to get them in control. That's one of the adult skills. Also, how to have a good parent counseling session, as well as proper praising for children. So that's going to be 5 adult skills that you need to correct the problems, and your children get to learn these too, because nothing that we teach is a surprise to the children. If a child truly understands all of the skills and the communication in your home, then it's all predictable, which is really cool because it decreases anxiety. And all children have anxiety, but some of them have more anxiety than others, especially in this day and age with the digital era, increasing anxiety in children and stuff like that. Definitely decreasing anxiety in all of our communication and in how we correct our problems is a bonus, right? So there's those 5 teaching styles. There's also there's 3 meetings that we have. We have couples meetings, family meetings, and individual mentor meetings. And in these individual mentor meetings, they're going to be making plans for how they are going to be self-governing their portions of the school day. So in my home, I have the morning portion that I do, and then in the afternoon, they govern the whole rest of their day. And then when they get older, they govern almost all of their day and just do the beginning, like the family devotion time, which we call canon, with our family. We also have a family standard, which handles a lot of the standards that we have morality-wise and stuff for our family. And we have different problem solving exercises and such. These are all different pieces. But let's just talk right now about those 4 basic skills. These 4 basic skills truly are the key to self-government success. So the first of the 4 basic skills is how to follow instructions. If your child will not follow instruction from you, you cannot parent them. Plain and simple. Following instructions keeps the roles in the right place. They acknowledge who is parent and who is child, who is teacher, who is learner. If your child will not do the 5 steps required to follow instructions, then that child needs intervention. So these are the 5 steps to following an instruction. You look at the person, you keep a calm face, voice, and body. You say okay or you disagree appropriately. Then you do the task immediately and then you check back. Okay? So let's look at those steps one by one. When you look at the person, this is huge because your eyes are the windows to your soul. Did you know you can send love and trust and acceptance to a person right through their eyes? So if they have to look at you when you're giving an instruction, you get to strengthen the bond and relationship right then. They also get to show you that they are welcoming your teaching and instruction at that time. So looking at the person is key for the relationship development. Also, number 2, having a calm face, voice, and body. Remember how they need to be aware of themselves if they are going to be self-governed. So they need to know, what is my calm voice? What is my voice like when it's not calm? If I'm like, mom, 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 that's not a calm voice. Okay. If I'm like, ugh, that's not a calm voice. Okay. And you notice that with both of those things, it's hard to have a calm face and a calm body when your voice is not calm, because usually your body mimics what your voice is showing. But sometimes a person is just jumping around being silly. That's not a calm body. Okay. So if they can understand the differences between those things, then they can make sure that they get themselves fully calm. You're going to practice that. Then they learn to say, okay, meaning I'm okay with you being my mom or my dad and giving me an instruction. And look, I was okay. I'm okay following this instruction. It gives them a reassurance, a self-assurance that they truly are okay with whatever it is that you tell them that they need to do. And then they say okay or disagree appropriately. Now that's a whole other skill. We'll talk about that in just a second. If a person disagrees appropriately, then you're going to have a little conversation with them. But if not, they say okay and then they go do the task immediately. Many parents, when they give instruction to children, just focus on the task. They don't focus on anything else. This is a mistake because then you put too much importance in the task itself. When you are teaching your children math, or when you're teaching your children to do a chore, it's not the chore or the math that's important. It's the child that's important. It's their development that's important, which means it's also them learning to take that instruction from you that is way more important than that math or that chore, whatever it happens to be. Many parents will say, I need you to take out the trash. And then when the child is like, ah, and they go and take out the trash, the parent lets them take out the trash with the attitude problem. They're not having a calm face, voice, and body because the parent's like, I want that trash out. The trash needs to get out. It's about the trash, right? And then if the child doesn't take out the trash, they're like, the trash did not go out. You were supposed to do trash. It stinks in here because of the trash, and they're just talking about the trash when in reality, the child did not follow instruction. The child needs training for how to follow instruction. It isn't about the trash at all. It's about the fact that the child did not follow an instruction. So when we understand these 4 basic skills, we can bring it back to developmental training instead of getting emotionally attached to things like the trash or the vacuuming or the room or eating the dinner. Those kinds of things, or doing the math, which by the way, you can give a person an instruction to do their math. Okay. You can say, all right, we're going to do 15 minutes of math time. I'm going to give you an instruction. I need you to do your math for 15 minutes. Okay. And then they can look at you, keep a calm face, voice, and body and say, okay. Then they do their task immediately. And then they check back. The check back is important when they say, Mom, I did my math. Is there anything else? Or Mom, I took out the trash. Is there anything else? Then you can praise them. And you should be praising your children 6 to 10 times for every one time that you correct them. This also helps with relationship development and it teaches them cause and effect. You shouldn't just be correcting their problems, but also praising the things that they do so that they can see the effects of their good choices as well. Okay, so let's talk quickly. I definitely am seeing I do not have time to go through the training on all 4 of these skills, but let me just briefly discuss. So accepting no answers and criticism. When a person does not get something going their way, Okay, when they lose something, or there's a change. We were going to go to the pool, now we're not going to go to the pool. Those are all no answers. Or I want a cookie. No, you can't have a cookie. That's a no answers. Or it's time to go to bed. Don't get out of the bed. If they get out of the bed, they've crossed over a boundary line. That means they did not accept the no answer. There's a lot of things that apply to accepting no answers. When somebody cuts you off in traffic, that's a no answer. How do you accept it? Do you complain? Do you talk to people? Do you put hand signals out your window? That's not keeping a calm face, voice, and body. Okay, so when a person accepts as a no answer, there are 4 steps. They look at the person, keep a calm face, voice, and body, say okay, or ask to disagree appropriately, and then drop the subject. Drop the subject is definitely the most tricky for most people, and I do my most training on that particular part of that step because it's definitely the new part, and a lot of children don't drop the subject, and their parents don't recognize that they're not dropping the subject when they're having different behaviors that they're displaying. So we can be really, understanding about what they need to do, and that can help them pull out of some of those bad habits of whining, complaining, attitude problem, hitting the wall, hitting their sister, not talking to you, silent treatment, whatever it is. Those are all things not dropping the subject. Also, if they go talk to dad when you said no, not dropping the subject, okay, and bringing it up again. All right, accepting consequences. I don't have time to talk about it all, but basically we have to give the person an opportunity to accept a consequence. If we don't give them the opportunity to accept a consequence, they can't learn self-government. If you just take something away from them, if you say you don't get your phone, you don't get TV, you don't get whatever, you can't have a dessert. If you just take stuff away from them, they didn't accept anything. You just did something to them. And then what happened to them is your fault. It's not theirs. If they're going to learn self-government, they have to accept their consequence. In our family, we use extra chores for a lot of our negative consequences. And the reason why is because work is the antidote for a sick character. And I didn't make that up. That's from Samuel Smiles. He was a philosopher in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And he wrote that in his book called Character. Great book. Anyway, so work is the antidote for a sick character. So then next is disagree appropriately. Again, I don't have time to go into all the steps there, but I will say that that is their favorite skill. This disengages the emotional, engages the prefrontal cortex so that they can do good processing with you. So this is the gateway skill to self-government, and it helps them get their way. Basically, they look at you, they keep a calm face, voice, and body. They say that they understand the other person's point of view. They share their point of view. They listen to what you have to say. They say, okay, and then drop the subject. It's a great negotiation skill. It teaches them diplomacy, teaches them how to get along with other people. So anyway, that is disagreeing appropriately in the tiniest nutshell, because honestly, that is when you're going to want to learn a lot about. So those are just a few of the structural elements that your children can learn and learn how to govern themselves and their school days. And it truly is the secret sauce for how to change all of the education at your house. I want you just to know one final thought before I end here, because I know I'm at time. And that is that your children, truly, their hearts and their minds are under attack by so many forces. If somebody can get your child's desire, their heart, their will to go in their direction towards some game or some product, they get money out of your child. It's called exploitation. Okay, if they can convince your child of something. But what if your child has enough strength to say, I can give myself a no answer on that. I can give you a no answer on that. I can accept a no answer on that. Or I can talk about this and I'm not just going to get sucked into it. What if they understand roles? What if they understand the morals? What if they've got the relationship attached with you so they can always discuss with you? Then guess what? They will not be the booty for all of these people who are seeking for the attention of our children all the time. God bless you all for all the things that you are doing to strengthen your children, to bless your children, to teach your children, and to make them truly unique people. I hope that you'll take it to the next level and give them the power they need to control themselves so that no one can control them. That's the end. I'm sorry I went over by 2 minutes.
No worries. Thank you so much again for taking time out of your time with your family and sharing with us. I did want to just point out that I think we'll probably be able to link the your website in the description of the video so that everyone will be able to easily find the resources that you're sharing.
I have a coupon code too. You want a coupon code?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you that if you want, or for the link or whatever. It's called start-TSG. So, and it will work one time. Okay, one time it will work, 20% off on anything on the website. So if you want the course or a package or something, it'll save you quite a bit of money. And so start hyphen TSG. So you can put that with you too. There you go.
Thank you so much. I do want to point out that with family partnership, we cannot reimburse parent training tools. So everyone is welcome to go and use this as an access resource, but family partnership isn't going to be able to reimburse it. Of course, you're welcome to purchase out of pocket. Does anybody have any
You want
questions?
the books and the charts and stuff that are for the children then, and like the journals and stuff for the children. That's probably what you'd want it for reimbursement stuff then.
And that can usually be linked to a social studies class, but it might be worth checking with your sponsor teacher about.
Definitely.
So does anybody have any questions before we say goodbye?
Well, I just want to second that these resources for children definitely can be reimbursed. You can link them to any course. They would be considered social emotional learning, which all of us want to do with our kids. So definitely. And then I'm going to check into getting some of these parent resources in our parent library, because I feel like this is just an amazing resource for our families. And then I want to ask Nicholeen just a question. If you feel like, or if I feel like, my kids are a disaster, my house is a disaster, I love everything you say, but I feel really overwhelmed, where do I start? What would you suggest?
Thank you, Katrina. That is the question that everybody has, especially because I try to give everybody the full picture, but it is like being shot with a shotgun, right? It's like, whoa, what just happened? So the place you want to start is actually with you, if you can. Make sure that you understand what self-government means for you as the teacher. You've got to set the example. I would actually start with going to that Calm Parenting Toolkit. It's free. I'd go there, I'd get that little bit happening. And then as far as the training for the children goes, I would say that you could start reading the children's books to the children, but you'll want to also have, well, the easiest thing is to take the TSG parenting course, truthfully, because it takes you step by step through it. That's probably the easiest. It gives you an assignment each week for like 8 weeks, and it even gives you some coaching and stuff like that. And you can even do the course with your children. Many homeschool families do that. But you would have to have at least that Parenting House United book in order to have the correction steps. But then, and then you can like say, okay, I want those journals, I want that chart to help so that we remember, and stuff like that. The choices map is going to be really helpful once you learn the program, because it's going to give you a visual to keep your mind straight. And I think one thing that I would just tell you is you don't have to be perfect at this to start, as long as you understand that self-government is a process, it's a journey. It's a lifelong thing, and you keep fine tuning it, then you can forgive yourself too. You can correct yourself and move on and not beat yourself up too, right? So there'll be times where you just do it over, where you like, you'll be talking to a child about something, you'll be like, just do it. No, you'll be like, I got to correct myself right now. That was not a calm face, voice, and body. Whew. Okay, guys, redo. So right now, this is what needs to happen. And you'll just pull yourself back to the language. You're going to want to hold on to those scripts pretty tight so that you can undo some of the scripts inside yourself that maybe are making things difficult. And don't emotionally attach to the things around you, a mess in the house and stuff like that. Instead, tell yourself, what's a structure I can do? What's a structure? So for me, for a messy place, I said, okay, before every meal, we're going to do a 60-second pickup. And I'm going to count to 60 as slow as I can. And we're all going to pick up as much as we can in that time. And then we're going to eat food and then move on with our day. And I did that like 3 times a day, and then 1 time before bed. And then of course we had our chore times, and we had our family work time. But like, I'm not going to spend my time looking at the mess and seeing it. Instead, I'm going to say there is a time coming that where we will spend 60 seconds or maybe even 120, and we will clean, and then we will get on to what is the most important. The people have to always be more important than the stuff. The people always. And so if you keep those as a top priority, that helps too. There's a bunch of different things. Does that help some?
Super helpful. And I'm wondering too, you're usually at the IDEA Curriculum Fair. Are you going to be there this year so we could learn more from you?
I hope to be. I am one of the headline speakers for the Great Homeschool Conferences, and there is their largest conference, which is in Ohio. I can't miss it. I'm contracted to be there for the beginning of the IDEA conferences. So there are I think the idea conferences kind of go for 2 weeks, through 2 weeks, kind of.
Right. And we're in Anchorage. And so we're kind of in the middle.
Okay, I might miss those ones because I think I am going to be able to do the ones at the second half, but not the first half, because the Ohio conference, and you can look Great Homeschool Conference just to be sure, but the Ohio conference, I believe, is that weekend. If Anchorage is over a weekend, and if it's toward the middle, then I'm pretty sure I'm in Ohio then, and I will be coming right after that. I really want to, I think I miss Anchorage, I think, and I'm sad because
Well, everybody look for her, because if she is there, you'll want to sit in on her talks. And if she's not there this year, maybe next year, because I know I've sat through some of your talks at the past and they're amazing. So I just want everyone who watches this to kind of be watching for you, because to see you in person, you get like a full day of your trainings. So
True. And it's so fun to be in person. And hey, I want to come to Alaska.
I know. Well, thank you for coming. That's how I first heard about you. And I have one more question. I don't want to commandeer the whole thing, but if you have a child that's struggling with something like ODD, how do you know the balance of requiring them to give these correct responses, or just them struggling with that oppositional defiant disorder? Like, how do you manage that?
One thing you need to know is that people have a tendency, once they have a diagnosis for a child, they have a tendency to actually give the child too many excuses, and it can hurt the child. So if there's one thing that I knew with my foster children, was I can't let them live in the zone of excuses, which means I can't give them excuses either. I can keep myself really calm and give them all the tools. And so when you're talking about ODD and a person who has a really ingrained habit, you're going to give them the tools, and you're going to do a lot of pre-teaching to prepare them before the possible ODD time, okay, of what they need to do. And you actually have to stay super consistent with them when they're dealing with ODD and it's so like intense, especially if they rage or whatever. Then sometimes it's we shy away from it. Like, we don't want to, oh, let's try to hold it off. The pre-teaching is there. One of the things that holds it off in the long term, excuse me, is actually the consistency in which you will correct it. So if you get to the correction more consistently, they will start dialing it back, and their strong will can make them pull it back so that they don't get the results that they don't want. How old's your ODD child?
Well, my personal ODD child is a teenager, but I think that there's going to be a lot of families watching this who, across the spectrum have got oppositional defiant disorder, and that kind of muddies the water. So that even you just saying that consistency piece is super helpful.
Yeah, it is. And you do still need to praise the good, right? And sometimes your ODD child doesn't want to be praised either. And the reason why is because if they know that something was good, then they feel duty bound to do something about it. And they don't want to know what the good thing either. They just want to keep doing the bad because they're used to seeking that negative attention. But make sure we do lots of positive attention, lots of consistent correction, lots of bonding, and family culture development. Because it can't be about the self. The ODD person is all about themselves. And so you've got to keep developing the family culture as the unit, instead of just being the self. Really, everything in my program is designed for that child, as well as every other child. But like, that's who I created it for, was those type of children that were living in my home.
Well, thank you. Huge thank you. Are there anybody else have a question besides me?
No, but I just would like to chime in and say thank you so much. I work with families that have a lot of kids on disabilities, and this is a huge area of need as far as behavior goes, and parents really just not knowing what to do. So I'm going to be on your website as soon as we get off of Zoom, and I'm going to buy those books, because I think that as far as the children go, if we could at least start with the story time, that's awesome. Are your books?
Roles book is a fun one to read as a family, just so you know.
What is it called?
The Roles book is actually written in story format, and it will help you teach the children about self-government in there too. If your children are like maybe ages like 7 and older, that's a really great read aloud.
Are they, Katrina, maybe you should, are they non-religious? Can we?
The Roles book is I have a one version that does reference God a couple of times, and that's my main version, but then there is another version that is secular.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to be offering those as resources to my parents.
Okay, and then there is a secular Parenting a House United as well. I mean, the
Awesome.
regular one literally only has like one proverb in it, and it's not like a ton, but there is one that is specifically secular.
Okay.
None of them are for any particular faith anyway. It's all just Judeo-Christian, you know.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you for making those secular versions available so we can use our funding to purchase them. So we're super excited. I'm excited. So thanks.
Yeah, you betcha. And you know what? If you want to see what's going to happen with IDEA, reach out to them and be like, hey, is she going to be there for sure? And they'll tell you for sure. And honestly, I'd like for them to contact me right now. So that would be good, just so I can touch base. So anyway. Okay, well, so good to have you, Megan. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and get back to partying ski slope style, you know, with my son. So
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing again.
okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.